Marcus had worked his entire life to buy his dream ranch on the edge of town. It wasn't just a piece of land to him, it was freedom. The rolling pastures, the sound of horses galloping, and the view of the sunset over the hills gave him peace after years of hard work. But peace didn't last long. His ranch bordered a neighborhood run by a powerful homeowners association, and they had their own way of doing things. One morning, Marcus walked out to check his fence line, and froze. A brand new fence, tall and locked, had been built across the only access road to his ranch. His gate was gone, replaced with theirs. On the fence hung a bold sign. Private access, HOA residents only. Marcus clenched his jaw. He knew what this was about. The HOA board didn't want his ranch right next to their neatly manicured subdivision. They wanted control. And now, they thought they had it. What they didn't know was that Marcus wasn't the kind of man to be fenced in. Marcus drove down to the HOA's office, his boots still dusty from the ranch. Inside, the board members sat smugly at a long polished table. "We've decided," the chairwoman said, tapping her pen on the folder in front of her. "Your ranch traffic is disruptive. This fence is for the safety and order of our community. You'll have to use an alternate route." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Alternate route? That road is the only legal access to my land. You know that." The man to her right smirked. "Then maybe it's time to sell. This isn't really the right place for someone like you." The room chuckled softly, as if they'd already won. Marcus leaned forward, his voice calm but steady. "You made one mistake," he said. "You built your little fence, on property that doesn't belong to you." The board members shifted in their seats, but none of them spoke. Marcus gave them a slow grin. "And I always take care of what's mine." With that, he walked out. He had a plan forming, and it would leave the HOA stunned. That evening, Marcus stayed up late at his desk, pulling out old maps, land surveys, and the deed to his property. Every document confirmed what he already knew: the HOA's shiny new fence wasn't just blocking his road, it was built on land he technically owned. The next morning, he made a quiet call to his lawyer, a sharp woman named Claire who had a reputation for dismantling arrogant neighborhood boards. After a quick review, she chuckled over the phone. "They messed up big time, Marcus. That gate sits smack in your right-of-way. Not only can you remove it, you could technically buy it outright at a public lien sale if they don't comply. Want me to set things in motion?" Marcus smiled for the first time in days. "Do it." Within a week, the HOA received a legal notice. They had 24 hours to remove the fence or face consequences. But instead of backing down, the board doubled down. They ignored the warning and even added a padlock, as if daring him to act. Marcus just shook his head. Their arrogance was about to cost them everything. The following weekend, Marcus showed up at the county auction hall, dressed in his usual boots and hat, looking like he belonged anywhere but a courtroom. The HOA board members hadn't bothered to come, they assumed their influence and money made them untouchable. But they underestimated him. When the clerk read out the details of the lien sale for the disputed gate and fence section, Marcus raised his hand. No one else bid. Why would they? To everyone else, it was just scrap metal and lumber. "Sold," the clerk announced, banging the gavel. "To Mr. Marcus, for $1. Marcus folded the deed carefully into his jacket pocket. That single sheet of paper meant he now owned the very gate the HOA had used to lock him out. That afternoon, while the board lounged by their pristine community pool, Marcus returned to the fence with a brand new padlock. He snapped it shut, smiled, and walked away. By nightfall, dozens of HOA residents discovered they were trapped inside their own subdivision, with no way in or out. And Marcus? He sat on his porch with a glass of iced tea, waiting for the chaos to begin. By morning, the HOA neighborhood was in uproar. Cars lined up at the gate, horns blaring, residents shouting into their phones. Delivery trucks were stuck outside, gardeners couldn't get in, and even the mail carrier was stranded at the road. The board members rushed out, furious and red-faced. The chairwoman rattled the padlock. "Who did this? Who locked us in?" Marcus pulled up in his pickup truck, calm as ever. He rolled down the window and tipped his hat. "Morning, folks. Having some trouble?" "You can't do this," one board member shouted, his face red with anger. "You're blocking an entire community." Marcus leaned out the window, holding up the deed. "Actually, I own this gate. Bought it fair and square. Your fence sits on my land, and now so does your only exit. Seems like you're trespassing on me." The crowd went silent for a moment. Then the yelling started, residents demanding answers, the board scrambling to explain. Marcus just smiled, enjoying the spectacle. Finally, he added, "Don't worry. I'll unlock it, once we settle a few things." The HOA had pushed him too far, and now he had them right where he wanted. The board huddled together like cornered animals, whispering furiously as the residents shouted at them for answers. Finally, the chairwoman marched up to Marcus's truck, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. "This is extortion," she snapped. "You can't just trap families inside their own neighborhood." Marcus stepped out of his truck slowly, towering over the little crowd. He held up the papers again. "What you did was illegal. You blocked me from my own property. I warned you, gave you a chance to make it right, and you laughed in my face. Now it's my turn." The residents looked between Marcus and the board. They could see the truth written in black and white on the documents he held. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, people were starting to realize who had really caused this mess. Marcus locked eyes with the chairwoman. "Here's the deal. You remove the fence entirely, restore my access, and issue me a written apology. Until then," he jingled the keys to the padlock in his hand. "This gate stays shut." A ripple of gasps swept through the crowd. The HOA had always been the bullies, but now they were the ones trapped, and Marcus wasn't bluffing. Chaos broke out among the residents. Mothers with kids in the back seats yelled at the board members, workers shouted about being late for their jobs, and an elderly man slammed his cane on the pavement, demanding someone fix this now. "This is your fault," one resident shouted at the chairwoman. "You told us the fence was for safety, now we're prisoners." Another pointed at Marcus. "At least he's showing us proof. What do you have? Lies and fines?" The board members tried to calm the crowd, but every word only made things worse. Their authority was crumbling in front of everyone's eyes. Marcus leaned casually against his truck, arms folded, watching it unfold like a show. He didn't need to raise his voice, his silence spoke louder than their excuses. Finally, one resident walked up to him. "Sir, if what you're saying is true, we don't blame you. We just want out. Please, can you open the gate?" Marcus looked at the desperate faces around him, then back at the board who still glared at him like he was the problem. He gave a slow shake of his head. "Not until they make it right," he said, nodding at the HOA board. The crowd turned on the board completely. For the first time, Marcus wasn't the outsider, they were. The board members were sweating now. Residents crowded around them, shouting questions, demanding solutions. The chairwoman tried to stand tall, but her voice cracked as she barked, "Everyone, calm down. We'll resolve this." But the people weren't listening anymore. One father yelled, "My kids can't even get to school because of you." Another added, "You've been bullying us for years with your stupid rules, now look what you've done." Marcus remained calm, leaning on the gatepost with his arms crossed. He didn't need to argue, the residents were doing it for him. Finally, one of the younger board members cracked under the pressure. "Maybe we should apologize and take down the fence," he muttered. "This has gone too far." The chairwoman whipped around, glaring at him. "Absolutely not. If we give in, we lose control. But the crowd erupted again, louder this time. "You've already lost control," someone shouted, and cheers followed. The board looked trapped, cornered not just by the locked gate, but by the very people they claimed to represent. Marcus let the tension simmer for a moment before speaking. His voice was steady, but firm. "You built this fence to shut me out. Now it's shutting you in. So what's it gonna be?" The board members looked at one another, realizing their iron grip on the community was slipping through their fingers. The chairwoman's face turned pale as the crowd closed in around her. For years, she had ruled the HOA with fear, fines, threats, and endless rules. But now, her power was crumbling in real time. "Fine," she spat, her voice sharp but shaky. "We'll remove the fence. Just open the gate." The residents didn't cheer. They stood silently, waiting to see what Marcus would say. He stepped forward slowly, pulling the keys from his pocket and holding them up for everyone to see. "Not good enough. You didn't just block my road, you tried to push me off my own land. You wasted my time, you mocked me, and you treated me like I didn't belong here." The chairwoman tried to interrupt, but the crowd silenced her with a wave of angry voices. Marcus continued, his voice calm but commanding. "I want it in writing. A formal apology. And I want every board member's signature on it. No excuses, no tricks. Until then, this gate stays locked." The residents cheered this time, not for the board, but for Marcus. Some even clapped, thrilled to see someone finally standing up to the people who had bullied them for years. The board members exchanged desperate glances. They had no choice. Marcus had them cornered, and everyone knew it. By sunset, the HOA board had been forced into the clubhouse. Marcus sat at the head of the long table where they normally held their meetings, only this time, he was in charge. The residents crowded outside, pressing against the windows, eager to witness history being made. A sheet of paper lay in the center of the table, already typed up by Marcus's lawyer. Formal apology and agreement to remove unauthorized fence. The chairwoman's hands shook as she read it. "This is humiliating," she whispered. Marcus leaned back in his chair, calm and unbothered. "Not as humiliating as trying to steal someone's land and getting caught." One by one, the board members signed. Some scribbled angrily, others avoided eye contact, but the pressure of the residents, and Marcus's steady gaze, left them no escape. When the last pen lifted, Marcus took the paper, folded it neatly, and slipped it into his jacket. He stood, walked out the door, and held it high for everyone to see. Cheers erupted from the crowd. The once feared board had been brought to its knees. Only then did Marcus finally unlock the gate. Cars rushed out, residents cheered, and the HOA leaders hung their heads in defeat. Marcus had won, not just for himself, but for every neighbor who had suffered under the board's iron rule. And the best part? The land, the road, and the gate were still his. Word of what happened spread fast. By the next week, local news outlets were parked outside the subdivision, covering the story of the rancher who turned the HOA's power trip into their downfall. Reporters asked Marcus for comments, but he kept it simple. "All I wanted was respect and the right to live in peace. They tried to fence me out. Now they know what it feels like." The HOA never recovered its grip. Residents demanded new elections, and within a month, the entire board was replaced. The new leadership tore down the fence completely and issued Marcus a permanent right-of-way agreement, ensuring no one could ever block his land again. Neighbors who once avoided Marcus now stopped by his ranch to thank him. Some even admitted that his stand gave them courage to finally push back against years of petty fines and bullying. One evening, as the sun dipped low over his pastures, Marcus stood by the old gatepost, the same spot where the HOA once thought they had beaten him. Now, the gate swung open freely, a symbol of his victory. He smiled, took a deep breath of the open air, and whispered to himself. "Some fences are meant to keep trouble out. Not freedom." And with that, Marcus walked back to his ranch, knowing he had not only reclaimed his land, but also his dignity. The fallout was bigger than anyone expected. The story of Marcus locking the HOA behind their own fence went viral online, shared on social media, replayed on local news, even discussed in town hall meetings across the county. People everywhere were cheering for the man who had outsmarted the bullies. The former board members tried to save face, but their reputations were ruined. Residents no longer feared them, instead, they mocked them for being trapped in their own scheme. One neighbor even joked, "Best community improvement project ever, locking the board inside." Marcus, meanwhile, returned to his quiet life. He didn't need fame or recognition. The open road to his ranch, the horses running free, and the respect of his neighbors were more than enough. Weeks later, the new HOA leadership personally visited Marcus, not to confront him, but to ask his advice. "You stood up for fairness," the new president said. "We could use more of that around here." Marcus gave a small nod. He wasn't looking for power, but it felt good knowing the community had finally learned who really owned the land, and the truth. As he sat on his porch one evening, watching the sunset spill gold over the hills, Marcus grinned to himself. The HOA had tried to shut him out, but in the end, he had locked them out instead. And that victory would never be forgotten.